Because we're not talking about a fast lap with little gas and new tires. We are talking about something much more serious. We are talking about surgical consistency. Controlled degradation. De un SF-26 extremidament sensible que, en teoria, debía ser difícil de domar. YK en manos de Lewis Hamilton empezó a parecer un coche listo para pelear un campeonato. The second week of testing at the Secure circuit did not start with fireworks or scandalous headlines. It started with something much more dangerous for the competition: internal silence at Ferrari and methodical work. While many looked at the timetable looking for who was leading the timer, something deeper was happening inside the red box. The SF-26 was no longer just a new car that needed adaptation. It was becoming a tool understood with unexpected speed by Lewis Hamilton. From the first day of this second week, Ferrari showed that the car had immediate performance when it entered the correct window. Leclerc marcó una referencia sólida en la primera hora, confirmando que el SF-26 podía estar en el grupo de cabeza sin necesidad de esconder combustible o forzar mapas agresivos. But what was truly relevant was not that return. This is what happened when the long simulations began. Hamilton did not go out looking for headlines. He went out to look for answers. And that completely changed the reading of the test. En las primeras tandas largas se empezó a detectar un patrón muy concreto. El SF-26 tenía un potencial aerodinámico alto, especialmente en el tren delantero, pero su comportamiento trasero era extremadamente sensible cuando bajaba la carga por reducción de combustible. In simple terms, the car could become unpredictable in the second half of the stint. That's exactly the kind of feature that, in season, ruins strategies and forces drivers to manage more than ideal. This is where Hamilton surprised everyone. En lugar de forzar el eje delantero como suele hacerse cuando el coche empieza a deslizar de atrás, el británico modificó progresivamente su estilo dentro del propio stint. Ajustó puntos de frenada, moduló la transferencia de peso en la entrada de curva y trabajó la rotación del coche desde el pedal, no desde el volante. That difference is technical but enormous. It means he wasn't just driving the Ferrari, I was interpreting it. Engineers began to notice that their times were not falling in scale as normally happens with thermal degradation. The yield curve was flatter, more stable. That doesn't mean that the car didn't degrade, but rather that balance management was being optimized lap after lap. Y cuando se comparan los datos con otras simulations internas, apareció la gran conclusión. El SF-26 tenía más margen del que se creía si trabajaba dentro de su ventana exacta. Frédéric Vasseur was not surprised by the specific speed. He was surprised by the technical reading. Because it's one thing to adapt to a new car in winter. It's quite another to start expanding your operating window in a matter of days. And that was what began to happen in this second week. Charles Leclerc, for his part, was still extremely strong in simulated qualifying attempts. His ability to extract performance on the first lap thrown was still intact. Pero en el análisis comparativo de stints largos empezaba a aparecer una diferencia sutil. Hamilton estaba estabilizando mejor el segundo y tercer sector cuando los neumáticos entraban en phase crítica. It wasn't a huge difference, but it was constant. And in Formula One, consistency is more dangerous than flash. Ferrari had arrived in Bahrain with an evolution of the SF-26 that included aerodynamic tweaks and power unit refinements, but the car remained demanding. Its thermal window was narrow and required surgical precision in managing hybrid power and tire temperatures. That usually takes weeks of correlation between track and simulator. Hamilton began to shorten that process by days. In the nightly technical meetings, the focus changed. It was no longer just, how much load do we need? But how do we extend this window without losing maximum performance? That is a championship discussion, not simple competitiveness. The second week of Bahrain revealed something that is not seen in the timetable. Ferrari has a car with a very high roof, but sensitive. And he has a driver who, in record time, is finding how to keep him within his optimal zone for entire runs. When a new driver arrives at a historic team like Ferrari, the normal process is clear. First adaptation, then internal equality, then technical influence. What was surprising and secure is that Hamilton jumped straight to third point in a matter of days. And that alters dynamics. The SF-26, as was already detected in the first long runs, has a very high ceiling but extreme sensitivity. It's a car that, when perfectly balanced in heights, rake, hybrid maps and tire temperatures, can be in the fastest group. But if it leaves that ideal zone even slightly, it loses stability at corner entry and begins to compromise the rear axle in critical phases of the stint. That's where the real technical tension comes in. In the analysis meetings after the track days, the engineers began to notice something decisive. Hamilton was not only describing the problem, he decomposed it. He wasn't just talking about lack of rear grip. He talked about how the car changed its response when the differential worked in the transition phase, how the delivery of the hybrid system affected the rotation mid-corner, and how the downforce seemed to shift slightly when the tank fell below a certain threshold. That's not superficial feedback. That's technical leadership. And when that type of reading starts to appear, the team has to decide where to push development. Until now, Ferrari had historically worked on maximizing peak performance at one lap, a terrain where Leclerc feels comfortable and where the team has built its recent identity. But the second week of Bahrain opened a different discussion. What if the real championship is built by widening the car window to make it more consistent on long runs? Hamilton pushed toward that approach. Not because it was slower by one lap, but because he detected that the SF-26 could be devastating in the race if they managed to make it less nervous in the second and third stint. And there the strategic difference between both pilots began to be perceived. Leclerc continues to be explosive, aggressive at the top, capable of generating rotation with minimal steering wheel movement. Hamilton, on the other hand, works more on the braking phase and longitudinal transfer. When the car starts to slide, Charles tends to continue attacking. Lewis starts managing. And in Bahrain, with demanding temperatures and abrasive asphalt, that management made the difference in the overall stability of the stint. The data began to show something uncomfortable for the rest of the grid. When the pace stabilized in the long run, Ferrari did not fall dramatically. And that's a sign of a serious car. Frédéric Vasseur quickly understood what that meant. It wasn't just a question of speed. It was a question of technical direction. If Hamilton managed to slightly extend the operating window of the SF-26 without sacrificing maximum load, Ferrari could have a less extreme, more predictable and therefore more consistent car on Sunday. And here appears the most delicate point of Act 2, the internal hierarchy. We are not talking about open conflicts or public tensions. We are talking about something more subtle. When a driver begins to set the technical direction of the car, his weight within the project automatically increases. And in the second week of Bahrain, Hamilton began to gain that weight. Not because Leclerc was below. In fact, Charles maintained a solid and fast performance. But the internal narrative began to change. Ferrari is no longer just the team that revolves around Leclerc's pure speed. Now it has two different technical axes. And that forces the team to balance priorities. Meanwhile, the rest of the grill watched. In the context of the 2025 championship, with an extremely competitive grid and with teams like McLaren and Red Bull very attentive to any sign of weakness, Ferrari needed to demonstrate something in Bahrain, that what was seen in Australia did not define its real ceiling. And the second week was a silent but powerful response. The SF-26 is not a perfect car. It is aerodynamically sensitive, demands thermal precision, and can get jittery when out of the window. But now Ferrari knows that, in the right hands, it can stay within that ideal zone for full stints. That changes the internal perception. That changes trust. And when confidence changes, speed comes easier. Bahrain's second week was not simply a technical test. It was the moment when Ferrari understood that it did not need to reinvent the car. You need to tune it. And Hamilton showed that he knows exactly where to play. What happened in the second week in Bahrain was not a simple confirmation of performance. It was a silent warning to the rest of the grid. Because when a team discovers that its car has more margin than it thought, and also has a driver capable of exploiting it with surgical precision, the scenario changes completely. Ferrari came to these tests with reasonable doubts. Australia had left the feeling that Hamilton's adaptation process would be long, that the SF-26 would need time to stabilize, and that the team was not yet ready for a sustained fight. But Bahrain, specifically this second week, broke that narrative. The internal conclusion was not, "We are the fastest." It was something much more dangerous. We know exactly where the performance is and how to access it. And that, in Formula One, is pure gold. Because now the focus is no longer on exploring blindly. It is optimizing. It's polishing. It is extending an operational window that has already proven capable of sustaining a competitive pace in long runs. Hamilton didn't just shorten his learning curve, it shortened the process of global understanding of the car. This is where the impact becomes structural. If Ferrari manages to convert that extreme sensitivity of the SF-26 into a controlled characteristic that is not eliminated, but managed, it can have one of the most complete cars on the grid. Strong on one lap with Leclerc, stable in the race with Hamilton. Two different weapons, the same project. The SF-26 has a very high ceiling. Yes, it is demanding. Yes, your window is narrow. but now they know how to keep it inside her. And when a historic team like Ferrari finds technical clarity, internal stability, and a duo capable of pushing development in parallel, the project stops being a promise and begins to seem like a real threat. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.